Today we have an exciting session. Marcy is going to be taking us through. Marcy is an award-winning entrepreneur, does a lot of things. She's one of our community partners, one of our leaders within the African American Collective. She's the founder of Marcy Brands, Tribes and History, and serves as the community leader at Bell Sisters. And through Marcy Brands, she helps speakers, coaches, and authors build compelling digital identities. And it has earned her awards like the Rising Star Award, BPM Global 100 recognition, speaking engagements, and in multiple organizations. And she featured in Times Square Billboard. Yeah, she's cool like that. And today she'll be speaking on how to build practical strategies for every founder. Well, build and grow practical strategies every founder needs to succeed. Without further ado, let's welcome the beautiful Nmasichi Chukwuemeka to take us here. Let's welcome us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Namdi. Thank you. Usually whenever I hear all these awards and all these things, I'm like, wow, I know we did all that. Um,
like I'm doing it.
yes. Well, thank you everyone for coming to today's weekly expert series. This is the entrepreneurship series, and once again, my name is Nmasichi, and today I'll be going over the fourth lesson in this series. So, if you kind of have been following since the beginning of this year, I have been doing the entrepreneurship series where I kind of, teach and tell my experiences as an entrepreneur, and I do it once a month. So welcome to the fourth lesson for this series. Well, a little bit about me, as Dr. Namda said, my name is Nmasichi, and I am the founder of Massy Brands, and we help entrepreneurs build compelling identities, but we also provide these entrepreneurs with affordable and trained help through our virtual assistant program. I also founded a digital media company, Tribes and History, that celebrates African heritage and celebrates trailblazing Africans. And I am also the convener at Bell Sisters, a community that supports female founders of color. And as Dr. Namda said, I am also very, very deeply involved with AIM. I'm the director of web and digital platforms. And I guess it's safe to say that I wear many hats. I always introduce myself as a multi-venture entrepreneur. So yeah, as I said, I do a lot. So let's dive into today's session. So our lesson 4 is going to be on building and growing. It's kind of a mini summation of the many steps that you have you have to take as an entrepreneur. Now, why does this lesson matter? I always ask this in all my presentations, in all my speaking engagements. I always ask this. And this lesson matters because it goes over the many things that new entrepreneurs face. So as a new entrepreneur, you're thinking of your sales, you're thinking of marketing, most probably digital marketing. You might also start thinking of implementing systems. So this lesson is going to empower you to take control of all of this, so that you can also go from being just a service provider to being an actual CEO. So now let's talk about being a full-time entrepreneur, right? So now you're in, because like I said, if you've been following me from my very first lesson, the first lesson in this series talked about diving into entrepreneurship. So this is lesson 4, as I said. So now you're fully in, you're a full-time entrepreneur. You're not a part-time business owner, and certainly it's an actual business, not a side hustle. You've made the leap. Congratulations. So what is next? Now it's time to build with strategy, right? You've crossed the line from thinking about becoming an entrepreneur to actually being an entrepreneur, right? And that is a huge deal. But the thing is, if you're like a lot of new founders, once the adrenaline, you first launch your business, you're excited. Oh my God, I launched my business. This is amazing. But once the adrenaline starts wearing off, and the real weight of actually having a business sets in. Now you're thinking, okay, you know, what am I doing next? What is the next thing? How do we even do this entrepreneurship thing? And if you've been following our sessions, you will know that at this point, mindset is so important, right? Because now it's no longer the excitement. There's no excitement anymore, right? And now being a CEO, you just have to realize it's not just about having that great idea. It's not just about the excitement of launching the business. It's about sustaining it. It's about growing that idea. Um, Let me actually give you a quick story. So when I first started my business, right, I realized that no one was coming to save me. I said I was going to start a business and I had started it. And I realized, yes, that paycheck is no longer coming bi-weekly. Now you have to really figure everything out. I realized I was both the employee and I was also the boss. And if I didn't set the tone, nothing moved. So that's why you have to go at that moment. I started going from inspiration to implementation. I had to start thinking like a CEO, not just a service provider. And how did I start thinking like that, right? The first thing a CEO will ask is, what is my growth strategy? Right. And this is hard. I'm not saying that this is easy. I'm not saying that this is a walk in the park. This is actually hard. And even for myself, it took me some time to get there because I was always, I was always on the move. I was always thinking, okay, let's do this for this client. This client has their website to be built. This client has this to be done. And I was in that service provider mode. I was always just doing. It's kind of like what is it, being on the hamster wheel, right? But I had to also start learning that I had to start strategizing on how I was going to build my company, right? It wasn't just working on the client work. Working on client work is great, but I also had to start reviewing myself. Okay, what did I do this month? How did this month turn out? And I started doing monthly reviews of myself to know how I was growing the company. And then I started asking myself, how am I going to bring in money this month? Because one of the things that is so hard when you're a business owner, actually, I think it's the hardest thing, is bringing in the money, bringing in the clients, right? So I had to start thinking, how do I bring in money that was going to last? What is my next growth strategy for the next 3 months? The other thing you also have to ask yourself when you're thinking like a CEO is, okay, where am I leaking time? Where am I leaking energy? Right? And I had to figure that out fast for myself. I realized that administrative tasks, it was killing me. I was doing so much administrative tasks. And I also realized that I had a lot of process that I had a lot of things that I did not have as a process. So for instance, client onboarding. Actually, last week, another business owner, Randy, who is a good friend of mine, she kind of covered processes as a business owner. And I think it's so important because one of the things that was also killing me was I didn't have processes. So it's no longer about just doing it. Now you have to start thinking about building a system around that thing. And that's what processes also does. So you have to get into the mindset that you're not just in the business, you run the business. And you have to start going from working in the business to working on the business. Now, what does working in the business mean? And what does working on the business mean? Working in the business is basically you're doing the day-to-day task, you're responding to emails, you're managing the projects, you're putting out fires, you're doing everything, right? But when you're working on the business, you're building out systems, you're going out there and making building partnerships, you're setting strategy, right? You're setting the growth. How is the company going to grow? How do I want this company to look like in the next 3 years, in the next 3 months, in the next 1 year, in the next 3 years? You're identifying the growth opportunities in your business, and you're also positioning the company to grow without you being the bottleneck of the company. You're positioning the company to grow that, let's say you want to take off, a month from your business. Your business can actually run without you being in the nitty-gritty of it. And the thing is, I know it might sound like a lot, but you can do this one step at a time. One way that you can actually start is by dedicating one day every week just to mapping out strategy, to mapping out vision, to creating systems, right? Because what this does is there is a shift in mindset that changes. So now, but let's talk about the other thing that is very, very important, which is sales, right? Because, of course, you want sales in your business. And as I mentioned before, this is kind of the summation of what we've been learning so far. So we've also touched this in the past series. If you haven't heard this before, you need to hear it. It might sound harsh, but you don't have a business until someone pays you. It doesn't matter how pretty your logo is. It doesn't matter how inspiring your mission sounds. If no one is buying, you're not in business. You just have an expensive hobby. Now, this is the thing about sales, right? Sales is about solving problems. So the offer that you're giving your clients, it should be a bridge between where your client is currently and where they want to be, right? For instance, like one of the offers that we give, we realized that we had clients that every single time they're always complaining of, oh my God, I need somebody to help me with this, help me with that, help me with this. And I realized, wait, these people actually need an assistant. And that was kind of also how we started the VA part of our services, because your offer has to be, it has to help the client. It has to solve a problem of the client. Now, when you're trying to get sales, one of the things I tell people is talk to people. I know, yes, you might be an introvert. You might not want to talk to people. People drain you. I understand that. I get that. But if you want to build your business, if you want to get clients, don't just hide behind your laptop, right? Go to that event, network with people. So, let me tell you one of the things that actually happened when we were first launching our offer. When we were first launching it, the first thing that I did was I literally put it everywhere. I put it in my newsletter, I put it everywhere, and I told as many people as I could. And I made a list of all the clients that we had had in the past, and all the people that were friends, and all the people that I had also helped in the past. And I said, hey, I'm offering this new service, service. Do you know anyone that would want this service? Or do you know anyone that would like to book this service? And actually what that did was that it put me and it put our service at the top of people's mind. And the first 3 clients that I got for that service were from the people that I had told. Now, those that I had told, they didn't book, but they referred me to people that they knew needed that service, right? So they didn't really need the service themselves, but they referred me to people that needed it. And another thing you have to understand about sales is people buy from people they know, they like, and they trust. So first of all, before people can trust you, they have to know you. But how will people even get to know you if you're just sitting in your house not wanting to go out? Yes, I know your logo is pretty. I know your website is amazing, but how many people are visiting that website? So you have to actually go out there. You have to create conversations that lead to trust. and you have to start networking with people. And when you start networking, you can actually just start from your warm network, right? You can just start from maybe people that you know first, people that you like, maybe your family members, some of your friends, and tell them about the problem you're solving. And from there, as long as you're consistent, your visibility will grow. But one thing that I always tell founders is never stop building relationships. Always keep building, always keep networking. I've had a couple of things that have happened with me networking that I can't get into right now, but I'll always say it, I'll always shout it from the rooftop, always network. Now, you're ready to sell, right? But who are you selling to? That's also something else that you have to think about. Because one of the mistakes that early entrepreneurs make is that they try to serve everyone. And I know sometimes it's kind of like you can't help this. You're not really sure who your market is for. But the thing is, if you're trying to sell to everyone, that's just a recipe for burnouts and confusion. Because your business needs focus, it needs a target audience, right? Think about your best client so far, or think about a client that you want to serve. What is that client struggling with? What language do they use to describe their problems? Where do they spend their time online? Where do they spend their time offline? For me personally, the way I figured mine out is that I thought of the demographic of the kind of clients that I was being approached by. And in all honesty, ever since I started my business, my target market has it's shifted, right? It shifted a little bit, just depending on how my business was. But I finally settled on what it was. And how I figured out mine was the kind of people I was mostly being approached by. A lot of my clients were female entrepreneurs. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't help male founders. Of course, if a male founder reaches out, we'll service them, would provide whatever service that they need. But my target audience, my niche, I niche down to female entrepreneurs. And niching down, it helps you to tailor your branding to your target audience. Now, let me give you an example, right? Let me just give you a scenario. So let's say you go outside, you just walk outside the door into the street, right? And you're trying to call out to someone to help you. Let's say maybe you have a flat tire or something, and you're trying to call out to someone to help you. And this is just on the street, not on the highway or something. And you're just saying, hey, dude, hey. Most probably no one will respond to you, right? But now, if you're outside and let's just say Dr. Namdi is there and you say, hey, Dr. Namdi, can you come help me with my flat tire? I promise you that Dr. Namdi will respond. That's kind of how branding is, and understanding your target audience. That's sort of how it is. You don't just go calling out to everyone. You pick a particular person or a particular demographic, and you call out to that demographic. And then when you start targeting that particular demographic, your messaging, it becomes clearer. Writing the caption for your social media becomes clearer. Writing the copy for maybe your website or your sales page or your opt-in page, it becomes clearer. And the more you listen, of course, your audience, the more you will learn, and the better you can speak directly to those people that need you. And of course, they can also pay you. So, of course, you're ready to sell. Now you're clear on your brand. How can people find you? Um, there is a saying that the world is a global village, and the world truly is now, because I can pick up my phone and call to someone in Tanzania and I'm able to talk to them. I can watch YouTube videos and learn from it. One of the ways that people can find you is through digital marketing. But first of all, I want to remove the pressure, right? You don't need to be on every platform, because I know right now we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have TikTok, we have Threads, we have LinkedIn, and so many others that I don't even know their names. You don't have to be on all of them, but you can be on one or maybe two, and you're showing up on those ones consistently. Um, you can think of the one that maybe that's where your audience is going to be mostly art. And that personally, that was how I picked up my own platforms, the platforms where I show up consistently. Now, when you start showing up, you're not just kind of like forcing them or trying to put it down their throats to, buy your services. Because it doesn't work like that, because they probably don't know you. Um, think of digital marketing like dating, right? When you go on your first date, you don't just propose on your first date. You go on the first date, go on the second date. Maybe by the third date, he asks you to be his girlfriend, and you then, get into an official relationship and, keep building. So that's kind of how digital marketing is, right? You build trust first, and you build this trust through value. You offer value to the people that are following you or are watching you. And it doesn't have to be something so very significant that is going to take a lot of your time. It can just be like a lead magnet, maybe uh, a small checklist or something, a checklist of, for instance, let's say you're an entrepreneur, a checklist of how you're building your business, right? It can just be something like that. It can just be a valuable conversation. It can just be just something valuable. It doesn't have to be something so significant, right? But that's what your content should do in digital marketing. And in your content, you start with the 3 C's of content, right? First of all, you're clear on what you do, and you're clear on who it is for. That goes back to what we just finished on, identifying your market, right? Then you have to be consistent. As I mentioned before, you don't have to be on 5 platforms at the same time. You can be on one or two, and you can pick a schedule, and you can stick to that schedule. Even if that schedule is just once a week, that's fine. And then you connect with this, with your people. Your content should connect. You can share your stories, you can share your wins, you can share your lessons, share something that your audience can relate to. Actually, one of the things I had done one time was I had shared a post. This was on LinkedIn. I remember that day so clearly, and I felt so overwhelmed. And I just shared a post of how, entrepreneurship is not really the glitz and glam that people or the internet makes it out to be. And I kind of just sort of shared a message that I had with a close friend of mine, where I was kind of struggling as an entrepreneur, right? And guess what that content did? So many people were reaching out to me in my DMs. Oh my God, this is so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So many people were reaching out to me. And then from there, some of the people that reached out to me, we built connections, we built a relationship. And one of them is a client that I have right now. Um, because people also want something that is real. They also want something that they can relate to. And when you also share, it also builds trust. And as I mentioned before, people buy from people they trust. So just show up with your own voice. You can just start simply by just sharing your carousel post. You can share some client transformation. You can share some tips that you have, maybe like Monday motivation, and you just build consistency and then build momentum. Now, still on digital marketing, if as a founder, you're thinking of, okay, you want to go towards ads and you want to run ads, please be clear on it. One of the mistakes that I see, and me, I also made this mistake. One of the mistakes that I see some entrepreneurs make is that when they're running ads, their ads doesn't speak to anybody. It's not, it's like it's speaking to everybody and nobody. And again, that's where the branding and identifying your target audience comes in. When you're running something like an ad, you have to be clear on it. You create your sales page, you create your opt-in page, and you have to use the same voice so that you can talk to the people that you want that your ad to reach. And let's say you're creating an ad, you have a client, you have a sales page, you have an opt-in page, you have your lead magnets. Your lead magnet is also what you can use to build your email list. Now, as you're building your email list, you then nurture the people in your email list through your newsletters. Another mistake that I see entrepreneurs make is they have an email list, they don't send out newsletters, they don't nurture their email list, and then 6 months after someone joins your email list, they receive some random email about a new service or a new product you're offering. Personally, I know that a lot of people, they see something like that. First of all, they might not even remember when they signed up to your email list, right? So this is also another problem that you have to avoid. You're building your email list, ensure that you nurture your audience through newsletters. It can be once a month, it can be every 2 weeks, it can be every week, but you have to ensure that it's consistent. My newsletters go out every Monday. If my newsletter doesn't go out, I am very sure at least 2 people from my email list will reach out and say, hey, is everything okay? Because I've been nurturing them for a while. And if I were to send out, a new service or a new product that I'm offering, I'm not just a random stranger that they have no idea who this person is. They have been on my email for some time, on my email list for some time, and I have been nurturing them. So don't do what a lot of founders do, a lot of entrepreneurs do, where they just have the email list and they just leave it there. And 8 months later, they have a new product or a new service and they go send out an email. That is just a recipe for a disaster. So as you're building your business, you also have to think about all of these things. And that will also bring us to structure and systems as a founder. So as you're bringing in sales, you've taken my advice, you've taken the advice of, experts like Randy. As you're bringing sales, your business would definitely start growing. And even at some point, you might even start feeling overwhelmed because maybe your business is growing. Now you have 10 clients that you have to service. You have 15 clients and you're starting to feel overwhelmed. That is where structure and that is where systems come in play. If you have ever gone a day where, as a business owner, the day ended and you felt it was a busy day, but you were not quite productive. This is what can happen when your business lacks systems, right? Because, as a solo founder, you're wearing every hat. But it doesn't mean that every week, it doesn't mean that you have to, you can create a system, you can create simple procedures for the things that you're always doing. Let me actually tell you an example of one system that you can actually start creating right now. Client onboarding, right? When someone says yes to your offer, what is the next thing that happens after they say yes? An example of how my client onboarding is for our business is pretty simple, but the thing is, you have to, it's a process, right? You have to document it as a process. So for us, okay, let's say someone finds our website, they click on it, let's say they want a VA service. The next process after that is a consultation call, right? And before the consultation call, though, as they are trying to submit for a consultation call, he asks them a series of questions. So he asks like the name of their business, their social media, what success looks like for, this project, their budget, because we also want to make money. So he asks all of these questions, and then when they complete those questions, it takes them straight to our calendar to book. Now, after that, we meet with them, we, learn what they do, learn how we can help them. And if it's a match, the next thing we ask is, when do you want to start this project? When do you want this to start? And then they give us a date, and then we send out the contract. And we created ours in such a way that the contract and the invoice, it comes together. So we send out the contract. Inside the contract, as they are signing the contract, the next page is for them to make a payment, right? And then after they make the payment, we then have their other processes that we have, and then we fully onboard them. But I had to actually start writing that. I had to actually write down this process. And I know that it might seem like it's not a big deal because maybe you're just a solo founder, but what happens when you bring in someone into your business? What happens when you hire a VA? That VA doesn't know, that VA is not in your head, right? So as I mentioned before, a system that you can actually create today as a business owner is a client onboarding system. And then, as I mentioned before, when I first started, I started documenting my processes. And when you're also documenting, it also helps you to save time. Because as I mentioned, when you bring in someone, that someone will already see your process, will already see your system, and will just adapt to it, as opposed to them coming to you and saying, oh, somebody booked a meeting. Should I send them an email? Or them saying, oh, this person has made their payment. What do I do next? So this is also one of the things that you have to do as a founder. And as I mentioned, this is Randy. She actually talked about this. Randy, who is also an expert in our expert series, she spoke about this last week. She spoke about processes. She spoke about standard operating procedures. And these are so important. And I rave about them. The reason I rave about processes is because I know how much time it has saved me. Let me give you an example, right? So the very first time I got my first VA, right? She really wasn't doing so good. I was stressed. I felt more stressed having her than just me working by myself. And as at then, I didn't really know about processes, and I didn't really know about, SOPs. As at then, I was kind of doing things, but I didn't really have like a standard process for this VA. But then I got to know about standard processes. I got to learn about them. And one of the things that I did was I spent, I think, like 40 hours I was crafting, I was writing, I was creating. And then I gave the VA the SOPs. At this point, I had two VAs. One of them was doing really well, the other person wasn't really. And when I gave it to them, within a space of 1 month, I am not kidding, I saw such a high improvement in how she performed. Her performance got so much better. And then one of the things we also do is reviews. And I was reviewing her, and then I asked her for feedback. And she said that the SOPs and the processes that I had written down helped her so much, because before it was as if she was trying to read my mind. But of course, unfortunately, she couldn't read my mind. So she wouldn't be able to do things exactly the way I wanted them to be done. And of course, that would annoy me and that would frustrate me and that would impact her performance. And I went from almost letting her go to thinking to myself, wow, this lady is actually thriving. So I also want you to remember that as you're building your business, you have to start implementing structure. You have to start implementing systems. Systems, they don't box you in, they actually free you up. Now, I know, okay, you're probably maybe a solo founder, things are maybe kind of tough, and you're overwhelmed, you're drowning in a lot of work. And you know you need help, but you're not really sure how you can get that help. And that's unfortunately what most founders do, because they are thinking to themselves, either they are scared to delegate, which was me at some point, because I used to think this person is not going to do this the way I want. I used to think if I get a help, they would not be able to accomplish the task that I want or do the task that I want the way I do it. So most founders are like that. They are scared to delegate, or they think, well, I'm not a big company, so I'm not really going to get help right now. But in terms of delegation, you have to understand that you can't do everything. Because as a solo founder, we know that you're probably the COO, you're the CEO, you're the CMO, you're the salesperson, you're doing the admin, you are doing so many things. And that is hard, right? So you have to start getting out of that mentality that you cannot delegate, because you're not going to be able to build everything by yourself. And also, if you're not delegating, you will not be able to scale. You're not a superhuman. And also, that's where the systems that we spoke about comes in place. Because if you have good processes, if you have good systems, you have good processes, when you get help, they won't have a lot of trouble adapting to how you do things. Now, let's talk about the other reason why maybe most entrepreneurs don't really hire help. Finances. Maybe what you're making right now might not really be enough. But also remember that you don't have to hire a full-time person, right? You don't have to go hire someone that is going to be working 40 hours a week. You can just hire someone that is working 10 hours a week for you, right? And you can also hire freelancers or independent contractors. There are sites like Fiverr that you can hire freelancers from. You can get like a virtual assistant that is just for 10 hours a week that can handle those tasks, like emailing, social media, those kind of tasks, so that you can also go out as a CEO and bring in more clients and also work on the strategy of the business. Another way you can also get cheap help is from interns, which actually brings me to the power of community. So this summer, I actually have an intern that is working in my company for free. She's working on our blog. She writes our blog for us, and at the same time, too, one of our employees is teaching her SEO, right? How did I get this intern for free? I got this intern through a program where if your business, it's a government program, if your business is accepted into the program, you get, I think it's 1 to 5 interns, however many you apply for, and the government pays them, right? And I got this intern through one of the community members in my community, right? So that is also another way that you can get help without breaking the bank. And a lot of these interns, they are looking for real world experience. So you can actually give them that real world experience that they are looking for. When I first hired my first VA, it freed up a lot of time. And that time I refocused it to working on client strategy. Now, I know, okay, yes, maybe you want to hire a VA now, or you want to hire a freelancer now, or, you want to maybe get someone to help you. Please do not make the mistake of being in a rush to be a boss that you don't fully know what the person that you're going to hire will do. Before you hire, ensure that you write down a list of everything that you do in a week. Highlight those tasks that don't need you. That's what you're going to delegate. So something like social media. Social media doesn't need you to be there. Someone can just create the content, right? Emailing, it doesn't need you to be there. Managing your calendar, it doesn't need you to be there, right? So I want you that before you go hire someone, think about it. Write down everything that that person is going to be doing. Because if not, you could make the mistake where you hire someone, you're not fully clear on what the person is going to be doing, and then that's a way that money is leaking from your company. So now let's take a breath. I know we've covered a lot, so we're just going to start to wrap it up. So let's recap on everything that we've learned so far. I know that I threw a lot at you guys, especially if this is your first expert series, or maybe this is your first time of coming to this entrepreneurship series, and maybe you haven't been following over the past months. I know that this might be a lot, but I mean, as a business owner, we know that we're always dealing with a lot. So you've made a decision to be a business owner. That's amazing. That's great. But you also have to understand that growth doesn't happen just through information. You have to implement what you've learned, right? As I mentioned before, you have to start treating yourself as a CEO, not just a service provider. You have to understand that sales come first. Sales is actually the most important part of your business, because without sales, there's no revenue. Without revenue, there's nothing else in your business moves. You also have learned about clarity, about your target audience, and you also have learned about, how you can maybe use digital marketing to show up online. And you've also understood that systems give you freedom, and you have to implement systems. You have to implement processes. No matter how hard it may seem, no matter how complicated it may seem, you have to have them. And also, finally, you have also realized that you don't have to do everything alone, and that there are ways that you can get affordable help, even as a solo founder, right? So you know now that you're capable of building a business that supports your lifestyle. But at the same time, too, I know that it can feel overwhelming at times. And I just want to say this: You're not behind, you're not late, you're on time, okay? As long as you keep taking the steps. One of the things that I've learned in life, and I and my friend, we were discussing this, is that every day you just have to keep making decisions that align with where you want to be in life. Let's say, let me give you a practical example. You want to lose 20 pounds in the next 6 months. You know, every day you have to take decisions. Okay, I need to go to the gym today. I need to get my 10K steps today. You have to keep making those kind of decisions. And one day, before you know it, you wake up and you realize that you're actually living the life that you prayed for. So I just wanted to say that because I know that as business owners, it can be a lot. It can be quite overwhelming, but just take it one step at a time and just know that as long as you're doing what you are supposed to do and you're showing up consistently, you will start seeing results. I wanted to say thank you all so much for showing up today. Let's keep building and let's keep growing. So this brings me to the end of lesson 4. I hope it was very helpful. I hope it was impactful. We're going to have lesson 5 next month, but I am just going to leave the time for questions.
All right. Thank you, Mercy, for another incredible session. Please, if you have questions, you can come off mute. You can just use the hand raise emoji to ask your question or drop into the chat and we'll have Mercy answer your question. So if you want to speak and ask your questions, we have a few minutes to take questions. Yes, we have one hand raised. Wanjiru, go ahead. Ask your questions.
Yeah, thank you. This is really great. Yeah, this is my first session here, so I appreciate the information that you shared. And the first thing that stuck out for me, I'm in the beginning of starting my business, and I'm a social scientist. So I'm a service provider. And when you had shared about shifting from being a service provider to a CEO mindset, is what stuck out for me because I want to give service. And so I'm wondering if you can share like that transition. I know you gave the points about, the strategy and all of those pieces, but that mind shift for me is what I'm curious about. Tools are great, but we still got to shift the mind, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Wanjir, for your question. Before I go into answering it, have you ever heard there is a saying that goes something like, I think it says you build a habit in 21 days, something like that. Have you ever heard okay. Um, so you can build that habit of trying to change your mind shift, right? Now, if you're asking me for the practical steps on how I did mine, so one of the things that I did was I actually sat down and talked to myself, right? You know how I'm talking to you now? I actually told myself, Masichi, you've quit your job, you've gone into the business, this has to work. You don't have any other option. This has to work. And I had to consistently tell myself that. And I started that doing things that would help me go towards that mindset. Now, one of the things that I do, right, is that I make a checklist of, okay, I have how my day is going to go, right? I have basically, because as a business owner, you can be all over the place if you don't plan yourself well. You can just wake up in a day, you have no idea what you're doing, and before you know it, it's 6 p.m., the day has gone, you didn't achieve anything. So one of the things I had to do was, okay, I have Microsoft To Do where I used to write down all of the things that I have to do in a week. And then I also have I have a tracker that I am my accountability partner that we use. And one of the things that is in my tracker is, so I broke down I do strategies, right? So I broke down the strategy where I want to be in a year. Actually, let me give you an example. One of the decisions I made was that I was going to speak a minimum of once a month, every month this year. And I had to build out how that was going to work. Okay, once a month, where are the places that I can speak? I wrote that down. I broke it into quarterly, and then I broke it into monthly and into weekly. Then as I broke it into weekly, I am my accountability partner. Every week, we meet each other and we make sure that we're both holding each other accountable for the decisions that we said, the things that we said and told ourselves that we're going to do, right? And again, I'm not saying it's a bed of roses. I'm not saying it's super easy, but when you're consistently doing things like that, it sort of becomes a part of you. When you've done it maybe by regularly every day for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, before you know it, that's kind of now the way that you think. That just becomes like your, what is it, your like the automatic way that you think, right? So you have to talk to yourself. You have to tell yourself, I need to understand that I am no longer in this business as a service provider, right? And as I said, as you said, I mean, I gave some of the tools, some of the things that had helped me. I make a lot of plans. I make a lot of strategy. As it is right now, I have made my strategy and my plan for next year till July, right? It doesn't mean that some of these things will not change, right? As you go, priorities might change, things you want to do might shift a little bit, but even as you're adapting, ensure that you're still being consistent. You're still taking those tiny steps that you are supposed to take that will place you where you want to be.
All right, awesome. We have one more raised hand. Winnie had her hand raised. Uh, we have literally 60 seconds, so Winnie, go for it.
I have 6 seconds, you said?
You've used like 10.
Thank you so much. This is my first time here, and I appreciate Nancy and AIM, whatever you're doing. I will just leave Wanjiru with the same, with a quote that I am working on, because whatever Mercy has told me, has spoken about, that's exactly where I am in my business. But one thing that's really helping me is a phrase that I came across. It's called "burn the boats." What does that mean? It's like when you're working on this, there is no other option. You are on this island, you came with this boat, and you have to burn the boat and stay on the island and figure out how you survive. That's what I have to say. So yeah, I'm burning the boat too. So thank you so much.
Wow, burn the boats. That is incredible. So yeah, we're stuck on the island now. No turning back. That's incredible. Thank you, Winnie, for adding that. Marcy, thank you so much. Can we give a virtual hand clap to Marcy again? Another incredible session. The feedback in the chat is incredible. Thank you all so much. I asked for like an additional 5 minutes, so we'll go through a few quick announcements. And I've really been trying to share my screen, but it's not working. So I'll share the whole thing in a boring way. But bear with me. I'll go through this. Now there's so much going on here. Technology can be embarrassing sometimes. So, all right. Can you also see my screen? So a few quick announcements. This expert series is the next one will be on August 9th. The reason why we're not having one next week is because we are having our first community mix-up post the summit. So please go ahead and scan the QR code and register for it. If you're local in Atlanta, go ahead and scan it. Or that's the link as well. If you're not able to scan, please take the link. But we want to see everyone present for the mixer. Let's just continue the networking and connections that we built during the summit. So it's next Saturday by 2 p.m. We'll be live in person here for all of our ATL people. And the address is there, the details are there. Well, go ahead and scan and get signed up. Also, donate. We said we're going to be more vocal about asking for donations now, or connect us to people that can donate to part of, to the cause we're working, and we're trying to make sure we're continuing to add value and drive value. Marcy said earlier, if your business is not getting sales, it is a hobby. Well, if it's a non-profit, mission-driven business like AIM, it's not a hobby, but it's a mission-driven, mission-aligned business. And the way we get to continue to pay staff and do all the things we do is by the support of all the good people who have contributed in one way. If you can be a recurring donor, that would be great. And I put the link for us to volunteer in the chat as well. It's for the people by the people, for the most part. It's all driven by us, and that is all the announcements I have. Thank you all so much. We do this every Saturday again, except for next week. That's our mixer. We're back again first week of August with another incredible session. So save this, just block your calendar every Saturday and know it's an appointment with AIM. The Zoom link doesn't change, it's the same link. And then please join the community. The link is on the chat as well. Join the community. That way you can see what's going on, when it's going on, how it's happening. And that's how we stay in touch while on Circle. So we want to see everyone on there. All right. Thank you all so much. We'll let you go now. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, but please make sure you join the community and stay in touch with everything going on. I will talk to you all on Saturday here during our mixer by 2 p.m. All right. Thanks, everyone.